Good evening. Today we celebrate the final Sunday of Ordinary Time, also named Christ the King. It's got a longer name that it gives here. What is it? Jesus Christ, King of the universe. It's much easier to just say Christ the King. This is a feast that we've always celebrated as a church, but it was codified in 1925 by Pope Pius XI, especially in response to what was happening in the world. Of course, we look at the 20th century and we think it's the deadliest century, the century full of war and death and tragedy and all sorts of horrors. So communism had kind of just taken off, and it was being exported around the world. And so in the Soviet Union, the particular flavor of communism began to deny God. Mexico, just south of us in the 1920s, the president at the time, President Plutarco Calles, instituted all of these anti-Catholic laws that forbade people from participating in the sacraments, that forbade people from attending Mass, that forbade priests from celebrating the Mass, from presenting themselves in public as priests. Yesterday, there was the feast of St. Miguel Pro, and when you see the pictures of Miguel Pro at his execution, he's got his arms out like a cross saying, "Viva Cristo Rey, long live Christ the King," and he's dressed in a suit and tie, but he was caught as he was trying to minister to his people. There's some other saints in Mexico as well that were persecuted during that time, and a great number of the faithful were persecuted during that time. And so Pope Pius XI, seeing all of these atrocities around the world, seeing this rejection of God, seeing this rejection being carried out in a large way by various governments throughout the world, decides that he's going to codify this feast day and say, we're going to celebrate Christ the King. He's the King of heaven. He's the King of the world. He's the King of the universe. And we're reminded that we have citizenship in his kingdom. So when Jesus is standing here before Pilate at his trial, and Pilate asks Jesus, he says, "Are you the King of the Jews?" Jesus says, "Well, you say so. You say that I'm the King of the Jews." And he says, "My kingdom is not of this world. For if my kingdom were of this world, my attendants would be rising up and they would be coming to my aid." Now, of course, in the final battle of Jesus on the cross, conquering sin, conquering death, his attendants did rise up and conquer Satan. And so we recognize that because Christ is victorious, because Christ has triumphed, we have hope, because we are members of that heavenly kingdom. Now, for us as Americans, we don't like to think of being part of a kingdom, right? We fought a whole war and established our country on the premise that we will have no king, no taxation without representation. We govern ourselves. We don't need a king. But in reality, we look to the way that Christ manifests himself as king, and he is very different from any other king. He comes from a lowly, humble beginning. He is born in poverty. He is born in a manger. Rather than a diadem, a crown with diamonds, he has a crown of thorns. Rather than an ornate throne, he has the cross. And he reigns from that cross. He reigns from that throne. He reigns with that crown of thorns because he has come to set us free. He has come to rescue us. He has come to give us the freedom that we cannot achieve on our own. He comes to reveal the truth to us, and he himself is the truth. Jesus says, "For this I was born, for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice." And then we don't have the next line where Pontius Pilate looks at Jesus and he says, "What is truth?" What a strange question to ask the one who is truth incarnate. What is truth? Jesus is the truth. Jesus is the way, the truth, the life. Jesus is the one that has all of the answers. Jesus is the one that has all of the hope. And so when we look to him as our king, we recognize that we are subjects of a great, merciful king. We're made subject of a king who desires not to lord his power over us, but rather to make us one with him, to unite us to him in his power. And so we live here and now, and we live on the earth, and we live in the midst of a government. And for the last 2,024 years, we've been referring to time as in the year of our Lord. It's 2024 Anno Domini, the year of the Lord. If we look at other institutions, as long as they may have lasted, there are none that can say we lasted 2,024 years. There are none that can say that we have had the same king for that period of time. There are none that can say this is the true and eternal kingdom. Now, if we look back through history, we look to the Roman Empire. Jesus is here talking to Pilate. Pilate is a member of the Roman government. He's the governor of this area. He's ruling on behalf of Caesar. And so for Pilate to hear Jesus as a king, well, that's weird, because there's only one king, and that king is Caesar. And Caesar is such an important king that we consider him to be a god. Look at communism, right? Communism uproots religion. It says, no, there's no place for religion in this way of life. In our postmodern world, we look and we say, no, there's no God above. I hate that song, Imagine, by John Lennon. Right? Imagine there's no heaven. What a horrible way to live, imagining that there's no heaven. I like the Beatles, don't get me wrong. But to kind of have this postmodern understanding of, there's nothing beyond this. But there is. There is. And what a sad way to live, to think that there's nothing beyond this, especially if we find ourselves trapped in suffering. If we find ourselves struggling. If we find ourselves mourning, if we find ourselves broken, if we find ourselves without any answers, then that just leads to despair, a lack of hope. All throughout the history of time and rulers and those who have power over others, they use that power for their own gain. Jesus, on the other hand, is a very different king. He uses that power to draw us closer to the Father. He uses that power to unite us in love with him. He uses that power so that we may, as members of his kingdom, grow in holiness. And so the church ends her liturgical year with this feast day of Christ the King, reminding us that we have one king and one king alone. We may not live that way. We may not live as if that were true. We may say, no, I have a different truth. I have a different truth than Jesus. My king, my ruler is this world. My king is my own power. My king is money. My king is prestige. My king is whatever I can get for me. My king is whatever it is that rules my life. But Christ is the one who rules our life. And we prepare to enter into the Advent season next week. How quickly time indeed flies. We enter into the Advent season where we prepare for the coming of Christ at Christmas, but more importantly, we prepare for his second coming. And in preparing for Christ, we examine ourselves, we look at our lives, we ask ourselves, do I really allow Christ to reign over me? Do I really give Christ the power? Do I really give Christ the authority that is his? Or am I still trying to be in control? Am I like Pilate trying to be in control? Am I like broken governments of the world throughout history trying to be in control? Or rather, am I trusting in him, recognizing that he is in control, recognizing that he has a plan, even when things don't go the way I want them, even when things are difficult, even when I struggle, even when I suffer? It's a scary thought. For those of us that like to make sure everything's in order, right? Those of you that are getting ready for Thanksgiving and, trying to do everything. My mom is hosting Thanksgiving on Thursday for the first time in like 4 or 5 years in their new house. My mom was saying the other day, I don't remember if I need to do this or that, and I got a new kitchen. I was doing Thanksgiving fine in the old kitchen for 40 however many years. It's fine, Mom. Don't worry. We'll be happy. We'll contribute. We'll help. We'll do what we need to. Just It's okay. No, but I got to have like everything. Father Michael, when he cooks, is very precise. Like he makes a list and writes down like timestamps, like 5:18, this has to happen. And I'm like, whoa, dude, just go with the flow. And he says, well, that's easy for you. I got to like time everything because I'm cooking all the vegetables and whatnot, and they got to be crispy, and you're just doing your steak there, and it's like it'll be ready when it's ready kind of thing. Both of those are kind of extremes, right? To find ourselves in that middle, to say, look, yes, I know I need to do what I can here and now to build up the kingdom of Christ on earth. I need to do what I can here and now to lead others closer to Christ, to invite other members into his kingdom. But at the same time, I have to remember it's his kingdom. It's his kingdom. He has a plan. And I need to get out of the way. This morning at the 10:30 Mass, we were delighted to welcome 13 new catechumens. Catechumen is someone that's going to be baptized, an adult that's going to be baptized. It's amazing. The last 4 years, the catechumen numbers have gone from like 2 to 3 to 4 to maybe there were 5 or 6 last year, and then 13. And they're people from all different walks of life. And we ask ourselves, what's happening? What's happening? There's a thirst for truth. When the world gives us falsehood, when the world looks at us as Pilate did and say, well, what is truth? When the world looks at us and says, well, that may be true for you, but this is true for me. We have to find that source of truth that is Jesus Christ. For a lot of us, we either want to focus more on what it is that we can get, or perhaps what it is that we can do for others. Kind of two extremes in the church, focusing on prayer, on holiness, and then the other extreme kind of focusing on social justice, care of the poor. And so often we try to make those mutually exclusive, but in reality, they're united. They're brought together. We want to pray, we want to be holy, and from that holiness, the fruits of that holiness is the works of mercy, the good that we can do, the calling and leading others to holiness. And so as citizens of Christ's kingdom, what are we doing? Are we trying to make ourselves better citizens? Are we trying to grow in holiness? And in doing so, are we also inviting others to that same holiness? Are we inviting others to recognize the goodness of Christ? I think the fact that there are 13 people that are preparing for baptism in this parish is a huge testament to the health of this parish. It's a huge testament to the spiritual witness of this parish. That people want holiness. People want communion with God. For us who have been members of the kingdom for longer, are we just kind of like, yeah, well, don't go over the top. Don't get too holier than thou and all that. Just, come on in. Or are we excited when we see that vibrancy? Are we excited when we see that enthusiasm? I hope so. I hope it serves as a model to us, too, to say, yeah, I'm a member of this community. I'm a member of this kingdom. I'm subject to Christ. He has a plan for my life. He is leading me to holiness, and his kingdom grows. And so as we desire to see his kingdom grow more and more, let us make ourselves, through humble service, more willing to call others, to lead others into this kingdom. We can look around and see all the suffering, all the problems around us. We can look around and we can see all sorts of sadness and despair. But we are reminded that Christ gives us hope, that he is a good king, that he is a king who desires for us to be in union with him and his Father through the Holy Spirit. And so as we complete this liturgical year and we prepare to enter into Advent next week, let us recommit ourselves that Christ may always be the King of our lives. We may strive to follow him each and every day.